In August of 2020, Governor Whitmer announced the Michigan Avenue Mobility Corridor. CAVNU was awarded the corridor, they're online also, and they were awarded the project to study and design. The original plans originally showed a loop around from Detroit to Ann Arbor, going through I-94 and around to Michigan Avenue. However, that was changed. Although Mayor John Racy, who I believe is also online, he even appeared on CNN to talk about it, to discuss Michigan Avenue and the excitement of what was going to happen. Although right now it's going to 94, so that's okay. We are here to talk about Michigan Avenue. The latest census demonstrated that Michigan is one of the top 3 brain drains to the other states. So basically our young people are leaving us. The jobs they do not feel are here. So we have to figure out how we can stop that, how we can keep our youth here. So that's what we're going to see right here. What happened is when we looked at the communities between Detroit and Ann Arbor, which include Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, Inkster, Wayne, Westland, Canton Township, Van Buren Township, Ypsilanti, and on to Ann Arbor Trail, we said, how can we help to economically develop these areas? How can we raise the importance of Michigan Avenue? We know it's happening in Detroit. It's also, by the way, happening in Lansing. They're creating their own mobility corridor. So how do we connect this across the state, and how do we keep jobs here? How do we create a hub? So last month, MDOT, who's also online, they announced a SMART grant which would allow for a further study of projects that could be utilized to develop our communities along Michigan Avenue. So SMART is not like our bus system. It's a different acronym. It stands for Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation. It's a discretionary grant program. So the Canton Board of Trustees, their strategic plan also calls for this technology corridor, and we're excited to see what the student teams come up with. I just want to go around the room here. We have MDOT online. We also have some guests here. We have Supervisor of Van Buren Township, Mr. McNamara, and we also have our trustees, Kate Berninski, Tanya Ganguly is online. We also have State Representative Ranji Puri. Did I miss anyone? I'm trying to see here. I can't see your on. Oh. Treasurer Diane Slavens. Anyone else I'm missing? Okay. We're going to look at the attendees. Who do we have online here? We have Christopher Gerwood of Aerotropolis, Dan Centers of Dana Polhanke's office, Greta Young of MDOT. We also have our technology committee. Jim Costiva is a previous state representative. He's online. Mark De Laverne of CAVNU is on. And the city of Wayne has their planner on. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our students and our professor, Mr. Krishna. He's the faculty advisor for this. So it's really exciting. We also have Zach Hayward from Debbie Dingle's office. So if you would like to take off and introduce everybody, that would be great.
Sure, we'll get to introduction. Awesome. I think we're good here, guys. We could probably walk off. Anne-Marie, appreciate that. We'll just lead directly from kind of her intro, her background. We'll just go straight from there. The Detroit News. Candace Williams was the reporter, came out with this article a few weeks ago. Canton doesn't need another Wendy's. It has other plans. I'm sure a few of you have already read it. A good article, a good excerpt from Anne-Marie. We have 2 Kohl's, 2 Targets, 2 Panera Breads, 3 Wendy's. You're seeing a duplication. We want to be more intentional about Michigan Avenue. Keyword intentional. You put the public on notice between mayor, the supervisor, and your board. You're doing the right things. You're bringing in top tech companies. Canton's bringing in top tech companies. You want a tech corridor? You want an innovation hub? Well, bring in Amazon, companies such as Amazon. We want to start being very intentional about what goes here, right? We're looking at how we take that theme forward and make this a technology corridor so we keep jobs here and bring more jobs. Keyword, intentional. You're looking at theme. You're talking about a brand. What do you want Canton to look like, be perceived as? That brand you're actually putting support and resources behind. Awesome work. You made an internal commitment to yourselves and your constituency through that branding message. Michigan Avenue Innovation Network. You're already calling it something. Awesome, right? You went out and tried to get some funding already. We'll talk through that a little bit later. You put a mission statement behind this. You're engaging external consultation because you know you're not going to figure it out all for yourself. Talk to other people. We're a small piece of this pie, right? We're not going to solve this thing for you, but you understand that you can get help from other places. And not only are you engaging us, look at the room. 2 times we met here over a 10-week period, and both rooms were packed for, the first meeting was 5 hours long, and it seemed like, and the second meeting was, a few hours. Great conversations. You're putting the support and resources behind your goals and aspirations. Awesome work. outside this building as well, A+ effort. A few days ago, we went and saw the landfill. A few of the board members in our team, we went into Sauk Hills, a critical piece of land here, centrally located in Canton, right along Michigan Avenue. You guys need to figure out what you're gonna do with that, right? We went out there and saw it. You scouted the area. Good work. Basically, you're on a great path, right? You've already started this. You're already putting the resources together. You're putting the support. Now let's work to kind of bring that all together, try to strategically define what it is you're trying to do here. This guy, his name's Trevor Paul. Let's just give a quick introduction.
Welcome back to our live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Christy McDonald. We're so glad that you're joining us here for day 2 of the conference from right here in the parlor of the Grand Hotel. Joining me now is someone that everyone, it seems like, wants to talk to. It's Trevor Paul. He is the Chief Mobility Officer from the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification for the state of Michigan, because everyone is looking at EVs, battery technology, and wanting Michigan to be in the forefront.
The future
Trevor,
is now,
the
Christy.
future is now, and it's happening, and they're all like, Trevor, this is what you ought to do. Are you getting a lot of unsolicited advice about what's happening next?
Yes, but also I'm getting people that want to talk to me about, oh, that project you did 6 months ago, the dedicated autonomous vehicle lane between Detroit and Ann Arbor, or what you're doing with the future parking in Detroit. And then when you layer on big announcements like the Ford investment today,
That's right.
I mean, this mobility ecosystem is humming on like all cylinders.
All right, so let's back up. You have been in this position for about 2 years now.
Yes.
Talk to us about daily how it has grown, what you are focusing on in your office.
Yeah, really there's 2 things that we focus on. First of all, so my position is the first of any like state. There's never been a chief mobility officer for a state. So we're writing the playbook as we go, but really we focus on policy development, so creating regulatory rights of way for the future of transportation, autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, transit, and then also public-private partnerships. So working with industry to understand, okay, how can we grow our industry, but also create community vitality? Because those 2 things can't be.
You could tell Trevor Paul is pumped, right? There's a lot of conversation and excitement around mobility here in the state of Michigan, and everybody's trying to talk to him. He said that in there. And we did. A few of us got the chance to have a few minutes, get a few minutes on his calendar, and we got some good intel. You know, the most important, heavily resonating fact I want you, if you're gonna leave this room with anything, is this. And this is his words, right? Technology for technology's sake. You may have heard something along those lines before, especially as the advancement technology over the years. Technology for technology's sake. Nothing you want to be a part of. You will not reach your goals if you're doing it because you just want to have technology here in Canton. If you want help from the state, if you want good access to funding, you need to have specific use cases that solve specific problems that go to that have a defined community benefit. You figure out what those use cases can be, and all the money and opportunity is in front of you. Connie Lowe from New Lab, working with the Innovation Center at the City of Detroit, is working on a startup competition. Bring ideas to us, specific use cases, solving specific problems for a defined community benefit. Some examples: data collection and analysis, technology for safer street crossings, off-grid illumination, level 3+ autonomous vehicles for food transportation. These are things, if you start backwards a little bit, think a little bit backwards, start with a problem and then create the solution, a lot of people would want to help. So this kind of brings us to where we're at today. You know, you start to think, what do you want people to think of when they hear Canton? Now think about that. When you hear Canton, what do you want the external environment and communities to think of when they hear Canton? Is it Canton, the National Pro Football Hall of Fame? You think it's a joke, right? But at the same time, it's something to consider. It's this brand perception. You're trying to create something and attract national corporate tenants here to Canton Township, Michigan, that, let's face it, not a lot of people know of outside of the state of Michigan. Maybe that there's an IKEA, right? It's a brand perception game you have to be aware of. When people hear of Canton, is it that Canton has awesome retail? Yeah, most definitely. Canton has awesome retail. Ford Road Corridor is parallel to none in Southeast Michigan. And even the neighboring, shopping centers like a one on Canton Center in Hanford. You got great retail here in Canton. Is it that you're a safe school or a safe place to live with great schools? Cherry Hill Village, PSEP. Who wouldn't want to send their kid to a high school that's basically a college, right? PSEP is awesome. When people think of Canton, do you want them to hear When people hear Canton, do you want them to think of, you're Canton super tech focused. There's radars and sensors at every corner. You're like an M city. Or is it some type of mix, right? Is it the North Carolina Research Triangle? We'll talk a little bit about it in a bit. You know, mixed use development where you have innovation centers, you have academia, you have research, you have retail, places to live, places to work, places to eat, all of that in one walkable area. Is that what you want people to think of when they hear Canton? Now it's your decision. It's Canton's decision. You know, in 10 weeks' time and limited resources, we're not going to be able to solve world hunger for you, right? But what we'll try to do today and through our report that'll be available is equip you with some targeted information that'll help you strategically define what you're trying to accomplish in creating that vision, because we're not going to create that vision. Canton has to be the ones to be onus of that, right? But we're going to do what we can to help you. Hopefully today you get some good recommendations. Quick agenda. We'll start with really defining the problem. We'll get into some background research. You know, we'll go through some analysis that leads really into our key recommendations for the Township of Canton, and then we'll wrap up, talk about implementation and a quick summary. All right. So starting this off, our team, you know, thanks for the introduction already, Anne-Marie, so you know a little bit about us. I'm Michael Mackey, Managing Director of Village Private Equity. We're a small boutique commercial real estate investment firm in the Metro Detroit area.
The clicker. I'm Shaitan Shupal. I'm one of the oncologists at the University of Michigan and a cancer surgeon. My area of expertise is in ovarian cancer and endometrial cancer.
My name is Elvis Torres. I am the founder and president of ETA Consulting. It's a small engineering firm providing services to electric utilities. We do renewables or help companies like DTE, for example. And yes, I can sing.
Hello, my name is Alok Chandra, Global IT Leader, IT Face for Dow Business. And since you added that, I enjoy watching football with a Belgium beer in my hand. And we have faculty advisor Krishnan, please.
My name is MS Krishnan. I'm a faculty member at the Ross Business School at the University of Michigan in Technology and Operations Group. It's a pleasure to be here with the team. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I guess we're doing fun facts. I could do the splits. These are true. My wife's in the back. She's seen it. Not in these pants, man. Maybe sign me up later. All right. What does this all start with? Anne-Marie talked about CAVNU. What is CAVNU? Well, there is this dedicated CAV lane, a connected autonomous vehicle lane, slated. The thought process was around Michigan Avenue from Detroit to Ann Arbor, because Detroit to Ann Arbor is connected by Michigan Avenue, essentially. So that got everybody really happily, especially the neighboring communities where Michigan Avenue funnels through. Canton, Dearborn Heights, Westland, Van Buren, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, and so forth. What economic stimulus can come of a dedicated autonomous vehicle lane running through our city? Right? There was funding supported by NDOT, already slated for it, and Canton owns some land on Michigan Avenue. What can they do to maximize or optimize the ability to create or develop something in that area? And they brought us here, and we started thinking about, you know, what's the real problem? You know, the problem is the township, the supervisor's office, the planning committee. They weren't really able to create a vision for what they want this thing to become. So, okay, let's create a vision for Maine. This is a 5 why analysis. What it does is it allows you an opportunity to deep dive into the root cause of any particular problem. So you ask, okay, we need to create a vision for Maine. Why? Well, there's this prime, centrally located, yet undeveloped area that could be a tech hub right on Michigan Avenue. Well, why isn't it a tech hub already? Well, no tech-centric companies have come into the area to put a footprint there. Well, why haven't they done that? Well, there's no reason for them to even do it, right? Why is there no reason for them to do it? Well, there's nothing drawing those organizations or residents to invest in that area. Well, why? Well, Canton or an outside developer have not yet come to create that ecosystem. So we drive down to a root cause of you need a draw. Canton needs a draw for Maine to really materialize. And we'll deep dive into what that draw could be and the importance of it throughout the presentation here today. But need to create a vision for Maine, is that the problem statement? Like any problem, how many different problem statements could come up, right? Need to diversify Canton's local economy and tax base. This is another quote directly from someone on your board, right? This is what you're trying to accomplish here. That's a problem. Why? Future viability of Canton is somewhat unknown. There's this aging out issue maybe that could be a problem in front of you, or less young people want to stay here and live in Canton. That's what we found during our research. Well, why is that happening? We talked to people. There's not enough attractive reasons to keep them here. Now think about that. Why? Why don't they want to stay here? Well, there's minimal walkable areas. This is a quote from somebody we spoke with. There's not a walkable area like other certain communities in Metro Detroit where I can walk, eat, shop, socialize, all in one area, in one walkable area. And it's interesting. You have a different problem statement that's somewhat similar, but driving down to the exact same root cause. Need to create a draw in order for Maine to material. So it's all about creating this draw. Let's talk. How can Canton create that draw? That's what we're here to do today. That's what we'll try to accomplish, to try to recommend on opportunities for for Canton to create the vision for Maine. We broke it down into 3 pillars of recommendation. We're calling one infrastructure, both aspirational and foundational. Things that can be done today, tomorrow, things that we should look down in the future, 5, 7, 10 years. Dedicated resources and collaborator engagement. You'll hear us talk about the word collaborator a lot for the next 60 minutes or so. Strategic initiatives, things that you can start working on, and specific initiatives with specific collaborators that could try to help you get closer to your goal of what? Creating a vision for Maine. This kept on coming up in a lot of our conversations. If you build it, Canton, then people will come. Right? We all love Kevin Costner and Field of Dreams. We'll try to keep a baseball analogy a little bit going throughout this process. If you haven't watched Yellowstone, I highly recommend. But if you build it, they will come. Well, okay, cool, true. Canton, Anne-Marie, do you have $1 billion sitting around to build something great? Do you have $100 million sitting around to build something great? If you did, do you want to put it all on Michigan Avenue? No, right? We want to take a step in front of that. If you envision it, they will build it. If you envision it, if you create the vision, then they will build it. Who's they? That's a great question. Let's figure out an answer at some point, right? A good benchmark, Lakeside Mall redevelopment. This is Candace Williams from Detroit News again. She's all over the place. It's awesome. Lakeside Mall redevelopment gets thumbs up from Sterling Heights Council. There's a $1 billion redevelopment happening in Sterling Heights around Lakeside Mall. A lot of you have probably heard about it. Some renderings to the side, a huge mixed-use development that's going to bring residences, dining, retail, parks, hotel, office space. The point of this, does Sterling Heights come up with $1 billion to redevelop Lakeside Mall? No, they created a vision for what they want or what they would love Lakeside Mall to become. And working with external collaborators that are bringing that to a reality is what's happening today. A good, great benchmark to think about. How we tackled some research methodology we'll get into. Over the past 10 weeks, the 4 of us, we estimated around 450 combined hours, billable hours for a very cheap rate, basically free, so it was good work. We talked to a lot of people, corporate innovation directors, municipality leaders, private developers, all retail, residential, office space, real estate professionals, both brokers and academic, and the most important people, your constituency, your current and prospective residents of Canton. We did some background research. We did a lot of benchmarking. What have other communities done? We talk about Peachtree, Georgia, or the North Carolina Research Triangle, or this Ohio 33 Mobility Corridor. These guys are creating tech hubs. So we tried to go in deep dive and understand what that even means.
Okay, thank you. So whenever you have a problem which is not very well defined and you're trying to do something, one of the first steps always is to figure out what have others done. We don't want to recreate the wheel. So our mandate was that can Canton be the next tech hub? But that brought us a question like, what does it mean to be a tech hub? What are other places which are defined tech hubs in the US and outside of the US? So we started looking at this question a little bit in detail. What communities or cities metro areas you look at, and then you automatically say, yeah, that's a tech hub. So here's a list. Here's a list of the cities which the Global Innovation Hub, which is a great research methodology, paper published in Nature Research, has shown that these cities are the top innovation hubs. Some familiar names here: San Francisco, New York, some other cities, a lot of cities in China now coming up in this list. But one of the names which kept on popping, which is not in this list, but coming up, and Michael's mentioned, is the Research Triangle in North Carolina. What's happening in Canton today probably happened in Research Triangle maybe 20, 25 years ago. And that was when they started doing the groundwork to set up a place where they collaborated with 3 communities, big universities, and now Research Triangle is slowly creeping up this list, and I'm almost certain that in the next couple of years, you're gonna see the name in this list very quickly. So that's a blueprint for Canton to follow. What can we do to become the next tech hub in this area? Why now? What's so special now if Research Triangle did this 20 years ago? Why do you think Canton will be successful now? We think that opportunity exists right now because this is a survey from KPMG. They did this survey in a lot of tech cities, and they found that after COVID, the opportunities for remote work have opened up. And now many companies are trying to move out of these cities because they're very expensive. So this is the right time to think about this. About 1/3 of the companies think that if they move out of areas like San Francisco or New York to something like Canton, they can save a lot of money. But what will they need to come here? What does a tech hub need? What are some of the characteristics of these tech hubs? So we looked into literature about what are some of the common themes around these tech hubs. All the cities which I showed you on that list, this is what they all have. They are diverse. They have a lot of walkability. They have bike lanes. They have public transportation, rideshare services. They have a vibrant cultural scene. They also have a lot of restaurants, retail, amenities, and access to a distribution or a travel hub. This is where Canton stands. We think we have a good, diverse population. We have to think a little bit more about the walkability. We have to think a lot about the bike lanes. We have to think about the public transportation. We'll bring this up later in the presentation. We have to create a more vibrant culture, and all these things you can't set things up, they happen organically. There is a lot of great retail, Michael showed that, and access to the airport. Within 15 minutes, you can be in DTW, arguably one of the best airports in the country. What other factors are associated with innovation and tech hubs? This is a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. We don't know whether you become a tech hub and these things happen, or these things happen and then you become a tech hub. We don't know that. But still something to think about. There's a strong local economy in these places. There's an abundance of high-wage, white-collar jobs. There's an access to talent. There's a source of funding. There's also the average firm size, so there's not one dominant player in the market which is sucking all the energy out and driving the decisions of the local government and making, with their power, overpowering everybody else in that area. So again, for Canton, lots of check marks. You have a strong economy, you have a lot of high-wage, white-collar jobs available in the area with the proliferation of all this ideas which Michael talked about around the mobility corridor. There's access to talent from a lot of good universities, University of Michigan, Michigan State. The sources of funding, I think this is something which is coming up again and again. There's a lot of innovation grants available, something to spend a lot more time, and making sure that we remain a community which is average firm size and there's no one dominant player which sucks the air out of the room. Now, this is an important consideration for Canton. So if you decide to become a tech hub and you're attracting all these innovative companies, the tech companies, it's this millennial generation which you're trying to go after. So if you have to solve this problem of aging out, this is the generation which is going to come in and fill that gap. So it's really important to figure out what is that this generation needs when they decide, okay, I'm going to live in Canton, not just work in Canton, but live in Canton, spend my tax dollars over here and go out and eat, do all these things in addition to doing that, these are the things these millennials want. They want a clear mission. They're not coming here only for money. They need a collaborative and innovative culture, a lot of co-working spaces, going out, sitting in a coffee shop, which is also a workplace. They are, they love management when it is committed to their success. Flexible work hours and remote work, again, an opportunity for Canton to think about. You need a lot of infrastructure, internet, 5G, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. They also want a healthy work-life integration, and that's where the access to the bike lane and walkability comes in. So these are all the important things for your future residents who you're trying to attract. Now, this is a report from the Brookings Institute, and they made a case for the growth centers, how to spread tech innovations across America. I would encourage you to read this report if you're a stakeholder in this. But Detroit metro area was identified as one of the areas where most of the innovation is happening at the moment. Again, the time is right. This is the time for Canton to think about it. One other thing we found is that innovative industries, such as technology sector, reflected in blue, it clusters. Once you get going, a lot of other companies will come. It won't be spread out in multiple different places. Manufacturing, healthcare, finance, they can spread out at different places and work together, but innovation hubs require that, next door, there's somebody who has an access to a technology, you go there and you together co-create something new. And this is something very common in all the cities which I showed you. So getting started is hard, but once you get going, it actually builds the momentum really, really quick. So there's a lot of strengths Canton has. This is the right time, and Michael alluded that you've already taken the right steps. So let's do a little bit of a deep dive with Maine. What are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats?
Thanks. So having said that, what it pertains to Maine, that's a question which comes. And then for that, we talk about that. We did an analysis called SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is a busy slide, so I'd like to highlight a few points which we as a team realized that it is important for Canton. And on the strengths, we did some research and felt that based on our discussion and knowledge and study on various hubs along in this whole nation, there was one point, or 3 points, which are very important. Location, location, and location. And this is what we have. We are very conveniently located halfway between Detroit and Ann Arbor, 15 minutes away from International Airport, 5 minutes to interstate. The other thing which I think we discussed about in the beginning itself is about diversity. That is one of our strongest points over here. 66% white population, 19% Asian, 9% African American, rest 3%, 6% Hispanic and others. Weaknesses, our walkability score is low. People cannot walk. Walking from office to home and back, not possible. My favorite walk is going from home to bar. Maybe I'm not here. There is no dedicated resource for Maine development who can take our mission and vision further up. We have few great opportunities, and that is depicted in this slide, that some of our neighboring communities, they are aligned with our mission and vision. And we can collaborate with them. And also, we'll talk about later, but there are a few private and public partners. When we talked, we realized how energetic and how excited they are to partner with us. And our threat, perception. What neighboring communities they think about us? What is the perception? Not so good. They think that we are not willing to collaborate with them. That's what, after discussing with them, we realized. We have some infrastructure issues. We talk about state-owned roads, city services, traffic's very fast. I think Maine, 55 miles per hour. People cannot walk. So, and we talked about this earlier as well. Next.
So when understanding threats, Cobalt, if you haven't heard, is a third-party community statistics and demographic study research analysis company. Canton bought this in October. Threats. A threat talking to a lot of people in Canton, particularly even the board. On your right-hand side, Canton is known to be retail saturated. There's too much retail in Canton, and it makes sense. You can't drive down Ford Road without being scared of getting into an accident. You got congestion issues in Canton because of your retail. Makes sense. But look at all this unmet demand. So all these numbers in red, I'll highlight a few. Anything in red is a gap. It's a gap, which means there's an opportunity to sell more here in Canton. The first one, $90 million. That's restaurants and other eating places. You think there's too many restaurants in Canton? Well, you can sell $90 million more per year. $120 million more in gas stations. You think you have a gas station every corner? $120 million more you can sell in gas stations. Automotive dealers, this is your biggest gap, but Canton's not really known. You go to Novi, Farmington Hills, Troy, that's where but $330 million gap. Grocery stores, name a grocery store that's not in Canton, right? But there's still $110 million of estimated dollars available out there to grab. This is unmet demand, right? Positive trend, but very slow. Households. Today estimates about 34,000 or 33,687. A 5-year projection, 34,065. That's positive, right? It's going up. Total population, 91,801 to 92,620. 0.9% increase. Oh, it's positive. It's going up, but too slow. We need to find a way to expedite that growth here in Canton. Where do people spend their money? This is kind of interesting. This is a really interesting insight. So basically what they're saying is that there's a current estimate for how much dollars spent in a single household per year, right? And different activities at different types of stores, different amenities. Toys, pets, and playground equipment, $1,461. That is estimated to decrease by 80%. Okay, toys, pets, playground, interesting. It's just an interesting insight to consider when you're trying to bring in the right tenants. On the other side of this, eating away from home. This number was actually interesting to me, $3,166 per year. I guess I'm eating out way too much, but if you look at that number, it's estimated to increase by 40% over the next 5 years. More people want to eat out. Be intentional. Use this insight to be intentional about the tenants that your investors or collaborators are bringing here to Canton. And we met with a lot of those people, captured some really, really good intel, not only about what's happening, but a specific way about how to go about finding that information.
So again, this is a qualitative research project. There are certain methods for this. You create by creating an outline of the question, and the question here was, can Canton become the next tech hub? How to develop Maine? All these issues. And once we have an outline of the questions, you go on to making a recruitment from the community, which we've done, lined up all the stakeholders, figuring out who is going to participate in this research. Then you conduct the research, which includes interviews. In our case, there were several interviews which were done, and we'll come to the details of that in a minute. And then you crunch the data and prepare your report. Now, typically, these qualitative research projects takes months. We had 10 weeks. We've put in the hours, but we had to abbreviate a lot of different things. In a real, true qualitative process, you have actually, when you sit down for interviews, you record the interviews, you take all the words, you do a word map. We obviously, in 10 weeks time frame, didn't have the time to do that, but we were still able to, as a group, bring all the themes together and come up with some really good recommendations for Canton on the things you can do starting today or tomorrow. So we used a methodology where we had some general questions which we asked everybody, and then we had some targeted questions depending on what kind of industry it was, whether it's a developer or is it somebody in the mobility corridor. So those questions were targeted for them and asking, what suggestions they have for Canton. We took all these common themes, the next steps, the 5 why analysis, which Michael mentioned about, the STP and the SWOT analysis. Some of this information is also in the final project report, which is a large document for whoever is interested for a nighttime reading. especially if you suffer from insomnia. It's a lot of detail in it. It'll take you a few days to get through that document, but all of this is available to you if you want all that detail. So these are some of the general questions. We just took a general approach of asking some open-ended question. You know, if it were up to you, what would Canton look like? What are your thoughts about Canton developing as a mobility corridor, tech hub? What benefit does it give it to you, et cetera, et cetera? So these were all the general questions, and then go into details for, you know, different questions for CAVNU or different questions for Singh Brothers, et cetera, et cetera.
We bucketed the output, the summaries of the different interviews with the different types of collaborators. We called it relevancy scoring. 4 different criteria: desirability, capability, alignment, and something we enjoyed calling realness. Desirability, do they want to work with Canton? Capability, do they actually have the resources to work with Canton? Do they need a significant amount of funding? Do they need staff? Alignment, do they share or could they share Canton's vision? That's critically important. And realness, talk is cheap. You know, they could have a great meeting, but do we think that they'll actually come to the table and collaborate? Will they put their cards on the table? This is a quick relevancy score matrix, 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high. We're saying anything 6 or above, you must engage, and engage now. Bunch of different people we met with: MDOT, CAVNU, Ford, M-City, May Mobility. We went to a SEMCOG meeting, Singh, Omni, City of Detroit, Ann Arbor Spark. The list goes on and on and on. A lot of detail, again, like Shintanshu talked about in our report.
Okay, this is a cool one. Imagine being able to charge your electric car while you're driving.
What? Say what? Well, that may soon be a reality for some drivers in Detroit. The city is building The city is building an electric car charging road. That guy's voice really got me there for a second. The technology was created by an Israeli startup that recently won a contract with the state of Michigan to build it. It will be the first of its kind infrastructure project in the United States. Now, for more on this, let's bring...
This EV charging lane system seems very difficult to deploy, but it's happening. You drive your car, and it's charging as you're going on. Imagine that was here in Canton. How many people do you think who have EVs, which is increasing year over year, would rather drive through Canton because of this road? Not only just to get their cars charged, but just to see the capability. And the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, is expanding on it, not just about the technology for technology's sake, but what it's going to do for the state and the communities
program
involved.
Announced by Governor Whitmer that would develop a stretch of road that will actually charge electric vehicles as they drive. And today she announced a new initiative that will prepare Michigan's workforce for an electric future. The program will help fill both current and future talent gaps for emerging jobs in the mobility and electrification industry.
This collaborative effort will provide important input and resources to shape current and future education and training offerings across Michigan. It'll facilitate
A pilot program announced by
Well, as we heard it, we've been talking about all this research that we have conducted. We did benchmark looking at other cities that have developed, technology hubs, locations of, where they have built mixed use and using, innovation technology as a center, right? And building, housing, restaurants, and all this mixed use. And then Michigan, as a state, is taking a step forward and trying to develop, right? Be the pioneers on development and mobility once again. Not from the Henry Ford days, but today, right? Trying to become that mobility innovation place. So the opportunity is there. But how some of these tech places are accomplishing, as we mentioned before, is a private-public partnership. It's a key phase on the development of these tech hubs. And Metro Detroit area, as we discussed earlier, Shitanshi was mentioning, is one of those places that things are already happening. So the opportunity is here. Going back to our 3 pillars, and tying our recommendations to this, because based on the research and based on what we have learned from benchmarking, this infrastructure, foundational, aspirational, foundational things that we believe you could start today that will help no matter what happens in the future, will help your citizens, it will make people happier by doing these things. Dedicated resources and collaborators, right? Those collaborators who work with the people in Canton, work with your staff, and be part of this. Strategic initiatives. This is something that it has to be developed. It's an ongoing, right, idea. There are things that have to keep, coming up with more of those ideas, but we're gonna give you some ideas here today. So we talk about the research triangle down in North Carolina, and one of those themes, right, going back to walkability, or bike lanes. This is actually the rendering from one of those locations. And there's a lot of streets, right? A lot of walkways, a lot of connections between buildings. You can see, right? You can imagine one is an apartment building, the other one is a co-location for offices. And this theme going on this tech hub. This is Michigan Avenue today, right? It's at 55 miles per hour, as Alok mentioned earlier. It's really fast, great space, right? There's a lot of room to do a lot of things, but it will be a challenge, right, to walk by there, go in a bicycle, and try to go to point A to point B, cross the big street, right, the big avenue. But there's a lot of area, right, a lot of space in the strategic location down Michigan Avenue in Canton. We already touched this, right? This is some of those ideas. Why doing it? Bike lanes, walkability down Michigan Avenue. And we're talking about Michigan Avenue, obviously. This is just a starting point. Canton overall could be connecting in multiple areas to do it, but you start in one place, you develop, you invest, and then things will grow from there, right? You'll ask how. Obviously, some of you already know in this room, you start with urban planning, master planning, improvement, and planning of construction. Require those companies that are coming and do it, right, commercial developers that are coming to Canton and say, hey, make more walkability, design, be purposeful on what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're going about it. The results, it will be a more attractive location, right? Coming to Canton, people want to come here to be healthier, happier, being more positive when they go to work. And what those people, right, are using these days, they're using 5G, they're using high-speed internet, fiber, all those things are important. If you're trying to attract high-tech companies, you have to have a high-tech backbone, right, infrastructure. So that takes us to the conversation, right, over the time, over history in the last, 40 plus years. In the 80s, you had those big phones, right, like satellite phones almost, big antennas, right? There's a 1G, call it. Moving to the 90s, text messaging, 2000s, bigger bandwidth. But today, this gives you 5, 10 times faster speed. It gives you that ability to connect to other devices, the Internet of Things, for example. Autonomous vehicles, right? And this idea today in Canton technically exists. If you put a zip code for Canton, this is what comes up for for service providers for 5G. You have AT&T, you have T-Mobile. This is a map directly from AT&T's website. If you look at here, this legend, 5G plus, all these dark blue, they claim they can cover the whole Canton area. We're focusing obviously on Michigan Avenue today, right? This is what we're hyper-focused here. But then a third-party tester have been testing and have found out that if you look at the purple color, 5G, this is Michigan Avenue, there's not a lot of that particular speed down Michigan Avenue, right? And this is what they're claiming. So you can see that there's room for improvement, right? T-Mobile, let's look at the magenta, right? They have 5G, extended range or ultra capacity, which is this really dark color, right? They cover a lot of areas in Canton as well. The third party tested, there's better coverage, right? Down Michigan Avenue, 275, which are very important areas because that's where you get most of your congestion or your traffic, people going through. But if you're gonna be expanding, right, the capabilities for companies to come to Canton, you might want to work with these service providers, collaborate with them, partner up, and try to expand those areas to get better speeds for your phones and development. And I think you already know this, but it gives you better bandwidth, it's lower latency, and there's a lot more technical capabilities. We can talk about this for hours, just in the technology and high speed, but just wanted to highlight it and mention it. 5G, it will be key moving forward for a tech hub. So how you do this? As I mentioned, talk to those service providers that already exist, perhaps AT&T, T-Mobile, and try to work with them. Try to get to expand the access points, their backbone on how they go back and connect to the rest of the world, right? And the results will be, it will attract potential companies to come to Canton to work, to develop. Because if you're having, autonomous vehicle development down the road on Michigan Avenue, they need that high connectivity speeds, right? So, I said, okay, Elvis, you guys have provided a lot of great information. This is a lot of work. Who's gonna do it, right? Well, the state of Michigan in 2020, as many of you already know, they created an office, a department called the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. And here are 6 key areas that they focus on. And we want to talk about the first 3, for example: increase mobility investment in Michigan, expand Michigan's smart infrastructure, engage more mobility startups, right? These are some things that they're being specific, being targeted, being purposeful, intentional, and how they're gonna go about it to create and develop, be the future of mobility in the country. So keep in mind, this is the first office of its kind in any state. It's right here. Who leads it, you ask? We already talked about Trevor. Trevor is the Chief Mobility Officer for the state of Michigan. Again, the first of its kind. And we want to highlight a little bit of his background and his resume here. He has a bachelor's in economics, an MBA. He's very energetic, passionate, and mobility-specific experience. He also has nearly 8 years of experience in the MEDC, right? So he has connections internally in the state. He already knows who to talk to, how to move around. Who else has done this? Detroit opened an office dedicated to mobility called the Office of Mobility Innovation, right? Same idea. You're being the first, you're being purposeful, you have targeted, and a place that people can come and talk to and say, I want to do X, I want to do Z. Who leads it today? Tim Slosser. I want to also highlight his background in resume. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, a master's in energy systems engineering. And he has also worked in multiple companies, including MEDC and Next Energy. Next Energy is the one deploying the project we're talking about in Detroit with the wireless charging for the vehicles, right? They're doing a lot of work here in Michigan, and he came from that company before he got to this new role as the Chief Mobility of Mobility Innovation in Detroit. So if Candace is listening to us in the Detroit news, this is going to be your next subject. Canton is getting the driver's seat. We're going to see this next year, hopefully, right, Anne-Marie? Yes, there you go. So here is what the Canton could be doing, right? We recommend that you could open an office of mobility innovation right here in Canton, right? That will signal, it will provide a place for people, commercial developers, academia, private sector, right? The coming to Canton and start working perhaps with the Michigan Mobility Office. And all those will have a place, it will be the epicenter where people can come and talk. Who will lead it? You guessed it, Chief Innovation, Mobility Innovation. We believe you could create a role, right, similar to what we have expressed earlier. And this person will become your evangelist, right? This person, he or she, will be connecting, talking to people, answering questions, becoming a bridge to internal and external stakeholders. The person who can help cut through the red tape, all those permits, all those ideas, helping create TIFs. And this person could be someone who can lead the charge in the communication and the conversation with external stakeholders. You'll say, well, who would you look for? Well, here are some ideas that you could be looking on their resumes. A bachelor's in engineering, an MBA, we're a little biased, obviously, MBA group, we think we should have someone with an MBA. The experience, we believe it should be like someone who has mobility or technology experience. For example, someone who used to work in Next Energy, like Tim Slosser was. Entrepreneur experience, right? Someone who knows how to start an organization, how to get it going. And maybe has worked in a department in Michigan, right? Like a MEDC. And something that you won't find on the black and white, right, on the resume, but you could be, when you talk to this person, you can find they have an entrepreneurial spirit, relationship builder, and a strategist, right? Someone who has this skill set, this capacity to do it. The result is opening an office of mobility innovation. Again, the epicenter. It will become that bridge to tie public and private sector. Chief Mobility Officer, or Chief of Mobility Innovation, sorry. The results, this person will be that point of contact, right? They can go around, they know what they're talking about in terms of technology. They can be the evangelist, they can connect and help with internal stakeholders, what they're going to planning, what they're going to develop, things like that. And this will also signal to the world that Canton is being serious, right? That they're really being intentional. Canton is being intentional about becoming a center for mobility innovation. So going back to the root causes, the whys, right? The two paths that we've been talking about, why. If we come down to the root cause, right? You need to create that draw. Why would these companies come here? Why would the public sector help you? Why will academia such as University of Michigan or Michigan State want to come here? Well, we're being intentional. We know that we're going to connect all these dots and help you be part of that. For example, in mixed-use development, this is just an example. I did not create this for you to build it, okay? But this is just an example, right? If we have innovation hub in mind, it could be an area that you could have, for example, apartments or restaurants, right? Everything in location that people can walk across, socialize, and eat, live, and work. You know, examples such as the North Carolina Research Triangle. So how would that be? How can you accomplish this? Well, we believe that you could create a vision, right? You put an RFP together. You send it out to all the best commercial developers in the country, and they will start bidding to create that vision that you have put together. We talked to the Singh brothers, for example, and they are doing this down in North Carolina. Different, not this research triangle, but in a different location. They say, that city didn't put the money, they didn't do any of that stuff. They put the vision, put an RFP, we bid on it. We're gonna put the money, we're gonna build it, and we're gonna manage it, right? So the city didn't have to come with that money, didn't have to come with the funding. The developer will, but you can define, right, by planning, by envisioning, by zoning, all those things, and say, this is what we want to do in this area. That will help, right, create that story, the Canton's ability to obtain funding and involvement for campus implementation via SMART, and it will help keeping those young professionals and young families, they stay here and maybe attract more of them, right? Because they want to come and work here. They want to live here. They want to enjoy the natural resources that are around here. So there's a good opportunity from that aspect. That's a strategic initiative. So what is your alternative? If you look at the Cranes Forum, Canton having nearly 100,000 citizens is virtually an island. Some time ago, right, the decision was to stay out of public transportation, connecting to other neighbor communities, and you know, it was what it was back then. But today, we believe you could work towards improving this at this time to make it more attractive for young families to come here and work and live. There are literally thousands of jobs in a 4-mile stretch of 4 road that has 0 bus service. People coming from out of town to work here. We talked to Singh. They are like, we have to give incentives to our employees to use Uber to come to work in Canton, right? They have senior centers, and they don't have a way to get there. Some of these employees are coming to provide services in Canton, and they don't have a way to get here, right? They don't have vehicles, and they have to incentivize them. So here's an idea. Let's solve a problem. Let's be specific with the problem. We're trying to solve the transportation problem and use perhaps driverless bus, right? This exists right now in Yellowstone National Park with this bison. Thank you. I called it a buffalo earlier, I got corrected. Really cool, right? This bus moves around a preset area as a public transportation. It doesn't have a driver. It's only driving through autonomous vehicle, right? Sensors, intelligence, service, all those good things. And this exists already across multiple cities across the country, and even other countries like Japan. And this particular example is a company called Beep, and this is all they do, deploy driverless buses. So how would you say you would do that? You could establish routes from Detroit Metropolitan Airport to Canton. You can go down Michigan Avenue. You can connect Shield Hill Village all the way to Ford Road, all the way to Michigan Ave. And you can create those routes, right? Or you could also focus, like we said, purposefully look at senior citizens that need support, right? They need transportation to go grocery shopping, to go to their medical appointments, to go to events, right? Cultural events. And you can provide these services using driverless vehicles. That will signal to the world that Canton is being purposeful to become a tech-forward location. And at the same time, we're solving a problem, right? May Mobility. This is a potential another collaborator that also do driverless vehicle services, but in this case, have you heard about Uber and Ride? I mean, Lyft, pretty sure, right? You have heard. They have a similar app, and you call this vehicle, and a driverless vehicle comes, picks you up, and take you to the destination. This already exists right here in Ann Arbor, in our backyard. They're headquartered here in Ann Arbor. We talked to them, and they actually have the project to deploy smart right now. So they're right here in our backyard. They provided an on-demand ride services. Really amazing stuff. Really neat. Super, right, technology-driven. Very technology-forward. So this is another example that we want to bring. And again, there are multiple collaborators or potential collaborators that could be deploying something similar to this with very little investment from the township. So next, you're thinking about, well, the citizens of Canton want to participate, they want to talk, they want to be heard. So another idea that we came up with, and this is something very a team group, it was fun to come up with it. Perhaps do a idea competition, right? It could be driven by the Mobility Innovation, right, office. And we called it Nifty. And again, we just came up with this. And what is Nifty? It's New Ideas for Technological Advancement by Young People of Canton, right? And this is really fun. So what we say is you go to your high schools and you tell to your high schoolers they come up with ideas to compete, and you perhaps, and again, this is just an example, $25,000 in prizes for the first 3 places, and say, hey, bring all the technology ideas that you can come up with. Innovation, technology, mobility, something like that. And you say, why? Well, it will engage your entire community. It will raise awareness in your community. It will show that you're being serious about networking and trying to bring ideas to actually deploy, or perhaps just to get an awareness going. You say, how? You can have companies, collaborators, potential collaborators. We were talking, for example, was it Ninja? Code Ninjas, right? They do development for kids. They teach them how to code, things like that. You could target, collaborate with one of them. They can put the pricing down, the prices, and do some sponsorship and things like that. And then the result of this is you're going to have X amount of ideas, diverse ideas coming straight out from the demographics of Canton, straight from the community. It will create awareness, buzz, right? Not only to the students, but to their parents, to their friends, to people outside Canton. And then you potentially be motivating those high schoolers to go after a trade related to technology, related to mobility, to stay here in Canton when they come back and say, oh, I want to do this and do it here. Or maybe they want to go to college and become an engineer and do something like that. Or anything but you help at the same time those students to start thinking about what they could be doing in the future. And this is, again, just some of those ideas. Much, much more could be developed. It could be, put in plans to continue these 3 pillars development. And we hope that, this motivates some of your creativity and perhaps to move forward with some of these recommendations.
So this is a lot of material, and I think the people over here and on Zoom are going to be the architects of what Canton's going to look tomorrow. But I think while you do that, while you're thinking about how we're going to become the next tech hub, how are we going to develop Maine, we just wanted to highlight that this is something which we should keep as our true North Star, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how are we going to keep these principles when we are making and developing Canton into a space where people are coming and working. So access to opportunity, a level playing field for everybody that reduces barriers, and access to funding. So we've talked a lot about going after the money from either the developers or the money coming from the state, but how do we make sure that this is actually equitably distributed for everybody who wants to take the risks and not for certain stakeholders who've always gotten the money or have developed in the past? So I think this is not just something which is good for Canton to advertise. This is not something just what the millennials want. It's also the right thing to do. So I think this is a win-win situation for everybody, but while you're putting all this together, keep this in mind, and this is a central theme. So thinking about all the strategies, so Alok is going to talk a little bit about how to get this going.
Thanks. Yeah. So right now, what needs to be done is build a vision, mission, set your strategy, create team. That is what is needed, and Elvis elaborated on that, and go and execute it. So with that, Michael.
Thank you. So a lot of information here, a lot more information in the report. We had a limited time today, so we appreciate your time. Basically, we didn't put a vision together for Canton. That's not the scope of what we were trying to accomplish, right? We're trying to give you the roadmap so you can go out and build that blueprint. Keeping the analogy, the baseball analogy from earlier, set the infrastructure. Let's recap. Set the infrastructure. Set that blueprint, whether it's through improving walkability, improving 5G, bringing in driverless public transit, an EV charging lane, something aspirational, getting the 4th fire station. Create a blueprint for what you want to happen here in Canton and on Maine more specifically. Number 2, our second pillar, engage those dedicated resources. Talk to those collaborators. We already teed you up, right? We talked to all of these different people. They're ready to engage with you. If it's them, if it's other similar types of collaborators, we're giving you a list of 20, and they're already waiting for your phone call or email to set up a meeting. And you'll get a lot of those details, specific contents in the report. Get your team together. Get that Canton Chief of Mobility Innovation. Put that office. Start working with Sing, Omni, M-City, Maine Mobility, CAVNU. Get supporters. Let them serve as Canton lobbyists and advocates to the state and to others. Lastly, execute on strategic initiatives, right? Whether it's Nifty Canton or creating a mixed-use development, having a developer incentive program to bring those low credit tenants in, landfill planning. We didn't hit much about it in the presentation, but that 100-acre land right on Michigan Avenue is coming up to expire in 7 years. Canton, what are you going to do about it? You think it's so far away, but decisions have to be made now, like right now, right? Figure out what that's going to be. The only thing in your way, if you can look closely, Anne Marie's the picture. The only thing in your way is effort and time. Effort and time, but the board has already, and the planning committee has already proven that they're all in, right? The effort is there, right? But you have to start now. Collaborators are ready. There's no excuse to wait. Not only will people come and watch Maine, they'll engage. They'll engage with the Michigan Avenue Innovation Network, right? And it's game time. We're having a little bit of fun. It's on you for putting 50 people on Zoom. Canton can do. Canton can do. Right. So we'd like to open it up with questions and answers for a little bit. I think we have some time. One thing that came across, successful businesses, successful ventures always started with courageous decisions. So we think courageous decisions need to start being made in this building today. As unpopular as they may be, you need to start planning, and it has to happen now. Right. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your support and resources, Anne Marie and staff. It's been a fun 10 weeks. We've learned a lot. We talked to a lot of cool people who some of us will definitely keep the relationships going, or hopefully, and that's where we're at. Questions and answers. Okay. Any questions? Go ahead.
So, what do you have planned for that nifty Canton competition?
So that's a good question, right? The whole point of this was let's come up with ideas for Canton to go and execute on. Nifty, are you a student? You're a high school student. Was that something you might be interested in? There you go. Perfect. Check. What Canton should go out and do is create this initiative, right? We haven't started it. That's not within our scope, but we recommend Canton do something like that so that students like you can have a say in what's going on in Canton, right?
We actually, just to let you know, our technology committee has created a Cantathon, or 24-hour lock-in. So we can basically tie it in with this. We were trying to look for a theme, so you guys have kind of given it to us.
Yeah, and for cheap money, call it $25,000. You got it in your back pocket. You know.
Leave your
For whatever it
donations at the
is, you're incentivizing a huge group of people to come up with different types of ideas, right? All of a sudden, after this competition, you got a list of 30 different outcomes that could happen, and you could find 30 or maybe 5 or 10 great ideas for Maine. And you're really excited about it, and maybe you want to stay longer in Canton because of it. Good question.
I think I had a question online. Let's see. I do see a hand online. Let me see. I don't know who TG6987 is, but do you want to ask a question? Oh, hang on, Tanya. It's Tanya Ganguly, our trustee.
Hey, Tanya.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had a question on, so you are recommending having like a chief mobility officer. So like you want us to invest in employing someone who is going to bring in the collaboration of the public-private partnership?
I'm going to repeat the question as I understand. I'm going to paraphrase it. Obviously, I cannot remember all the words. But Tanya was asking, we're recommending to create a role of Chief of Mobility Innovation in Canton as well. And she's asking what are the resources or financial, I believe is what she was going for, that Canton needs to, project or carve out to create this role. The short answer is we're not sure what the exact number is. Our recommendation overall is to look at your resources, perhaps reallocate. Maybe you have some people already on board. We don't know your staff necessarily exactly, but the approach is more like creating like a department and creating that role of Chief Mobility Innovation to lead it. But the department will include perhaps technicians, right? For example, you bring an NCD to come here, they will like a dedicated technician that can do installations, they can do repairs, right? You have like a marketing person or communication, or Kristen can split in a couple other roles, right? Be very targeted, create a website, right, for this department where you can provide information of how to contact certain people about certain subjects. You can start promoting the initiatives that you're doing from innovation. So it's a whole concept that, yes, you have to dedicate certain financial assets, right? Let's say, I don't know, $200,000-$300,000 a year or something like that. It depends how much you want to pay that chief of mobility innovation, but it's a little bit more than that, right? Including like website, communications to the outside, and providing that email where people can contact and have that conversation. So, go ahead.
I just want to add, I think early on it will be an investment. Yes, you have to hire a person who will do it, But I just want to highlight something which came up in our interviews. M-City, for example, has a structure where they get the funding from the federal government, but then when they deploy the cars and the sensors, the city of Ann Arbor actually pays them. So this is the city of Ann Arbor gets some of that money, right? So city of Ann Arbor is getting the money from M-City, which is coming from the federal dollars as a grant for utilizing their streets. So I mean, you can think about this like if somebody from Ford now wants to come here and Canton has the infrastructure. The chief mobility officer is saying, okay, yeah, you want to use these streets, we have it. You want to do real-time testing over here, this is the budget for it, and you can do it in the city. And then eventually in 5 years, the role is paid by itself from the investment made by all the companies who are coming for the infrastructure. Initially, yes, there's an investment, but eventually I think there'll be a decent return on investment.
And to answer the question, like very simply, Tanya asked, how much would it take to invest? Well, how real is this for you? How much do you want to invest in it? How serious are you about this thing? Answer that question with a question, right?
Any other question?
Another question?
No, I just wanted to say thank you guys. It was great having conversations with you guys. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there today in
We miss you.
person, but it was great having these conversations and seeing your, your other presentation and this presentation. And I think these are some doable goals, and really appreciate the work that you guys did.
For sure. Appreciate you guys.
It's been a pleasure so far. So it's been great.
Any other questions online? How about in the room? Anyone? Comments?
Don't be shy.
Sure, go ahead.
Go for it.
The youngest member of the audience has a lot of questions, that's good.
Is the planned electric charging road supposed to go through Canton, or?
Again, the idea is come up with strategic initiatives that Canton could execute on if they decide to try to lobby Next Energy to come in and deploy what they're trying to do in Detroit. Fine. But you got to find, like Elvis said, specific use cases, specific problems that could be solved with technology. That's what Canton needs to focus on.
Just to let you know, we did apply for that. They did put that out, and we did, but they put it in Detroit, so.
It's more so the idea, the concept of solving certain problems, not just only for technology's sake.
Next question.
Do you have another question?
Okay.
He said he has 5 questions.
Or we can talk after if you'd like.
So good.
Yeah.
Let's face it, with all this kind of stuff, this community has already shown its willingness to spend. And they know that comes with tax increases. Nobody wants to talk about it. But that's what it's going to take. We should look at different ways of like an impact fee in other communities that I visited. And they have impact fees. In other words, if you want to do this, there's an impact charge. And it's spread out that way. Instead of going with it, and say, we have to, they should have.
Yeah, it's possible, right? Because it happens in every community. We're all right. But some of the things that we were trying to say, and as we've been researching, for example, yes, there has to be some kind of investment, right? Either time or current resources have to be dedicated to do other things. But for example, Singh said, they're developing a mixed-use complex down in North Carolina, and that city did not put any money to build it, right? They just put an RFP, they put the idea, they said, we want to do X, Y, Z in this area. This is an RFP, and then they have multiple commercial developers, like, I don't know how many, but I will say you could get like 10 plus if you go and reach out, right? And these commercial developers will put their own money with certain understanding. Obviously, there have to be some kind of incentive or certain, tax abatement. things like that to help motivate these developers to come and do the development. But as a result, you bring this job, this development, this construction that is part of the new Canton moving forward. So yes, it will take a lot of money, but we're not, the way we see it, and again, we're not necessarily professionals on this aspect, the way we found it is, it's possible to try to put that burden somewhere else, right? And there's a lot of money in the state level and the federal level that if you put the problem, you try to solve a problem. For example, we pitched the senior citizens in senior centers, right? They need transportation. Sometimes they depend on someone else to transport them. But okay, let's put a driverless vehicle. They can come pick up this person to move from the senior center to their medical appointment and back. And there are companies like May Mobility that they just do it, right? Because they have other ways to grab the revenue, or there's funds from the state of Michigan because there are certain initiatives to do things like that. So yes, there's a little bit of investment, but I don't think it's as much as it could be, potentially.
We have another question online. Jim Costiva, go ahead. Jim, you can go ahead.
He's muted.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Am I okay now?
Yes, there you go.
Thank you. And just a logistical one relative to the slides themselves. Is the intention to post these somewhere on a township website, or the recording or the YouTube video of the presentation? Will that be posted on a Canton website?
A version.
Yeah, we could put a version up, yes. Did you have a question, Jim? Jim used to work at the University of Michigan. He was also a former state representative.
Yeah. Thank you. He was asking if the slides were going to be posted somewhere. So, all right. Any other question in the room, online? Yes, go ahead.
From your interviews with Canton residents, what did you find were the main key issues that they wanted to see solved by any potential developments in the area?
Mostly they want to be heard. They want to speak more and collaborate more with Canton. That's their key thing. Whatever issues they may have in their own homes about, you know, what should be going on around them, they just want to be heard. You know, they want a platform to be heard. And Nifty could be that within kids. It's more directed, targeted, you know, opportunity for younger, energetic students like yourself to come up with ideas for things that would not only be you, it would be your parents, your friends, their network, and, you know, to get things started. Yeah. In our scope, we didn't have, you know, much time. We spoke with three different residents. Yes. So we had people in and outside of our network. So we talked to one person that we knew of. We talked to one person who was a complete kind of stranger, and we talked to somebody who works in the township of Canton. Doesn't live in Canton, but works in Canton.
Absolutely. This is all public information that we found in research. It's not private. We didn't pay for it. Anything like that. So this is more like third parties, you know, like they do it for the benefit of, you know, the people of Canton or the other places. So they basically just measure speed, the speed, right, of mobile devices in those areas, and that's the map that we presented. So yeah, it is referred to in the report as well.
It's actually an app you can download on your phone. And the app, when it will send the signal back to this open source data, it will also tag your geolocation. So if you do it over here, it will just say video check. So it will download the video and it'll say, the speed for your T-Mobile was this much. So it gets registered. So multiple people do it, and that's how they build a map of what's the real time in actual reality download speeds, as opposed to AT&T putting a map saying, yeah, there's coverage everywhere.
I mean, even though we like the blue wave from AT&T, the AT&T one.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So Victor, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Alok.
we will provide these details in our report as well for your reference.
Victor is our Director of IT and Innovation. And so basically I saw him smiling when you were presenting that, because that was one of his claims. The maps that AT&T and T-Mobile show for coverage, that's not what we experience.
Yeah, and obviously as we researched and found, high-speed internet and broadband, as you know, companies claim XYZ, but in reality, what is it?
So one thing I want to add is that actually it's an opportunity for you, because any city can say we have 5G, look at the map. What Canton can do is jump on that right now and partner with, pick one, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, whoever, incentivize them to put more towers here. And then when the companies come in who need the 5G, you say, look, it's not just the map AT&T is showing you, it's the real deal, because we've already been intentional in making the 5G network go. So these are all the decisions strategically you're going to have to make, like which one of these many, many, many recommendations we put out there, which one to do first. I think that's going to be a discussion for you all.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Which one in particular are you referencing? Just any example. Yeah, sure. Well, for instance, take Maine. Take Michigan Avenue. We're talking just east of 275, all the way up till Morton Taylor. Maybe a little bit more west of Morton Taylor. That's a few miles. That area the ownership is mixed. You have some Canton-owned land, you have residential land, and you have private retail landlords or investors that own shopping centers there. We think Canton should be very strategic, one, with the land they already own, because they could do whatever they want with it. Two, there's available land all around. If we go back to that picture of Michigan Avenue, you could tell there's land available for sale everywhere. We think Canton should be really strategic about who purchases that land, if not them, and what they do with it, right? The community can be a part of it. Personally, I'm a part of this community. We own and manage some real estate here in Canton. We'd love to be a part of that, and there's others like me who would want to partner with Canton to be able to bring that vision to life. Right? Whoever it is, it doesn't necessarily matter, as long as they kind of fit that criteria and align with the vision, what Canton's trying to create. Well, in Lakeside Mall, that was privately owned, but the public, in Sterling Heights, the Lakeside Mall is privately owned, but they needed help in that situation. They were, I don't know when the last time you guys been to Lakeside Mall, but they've been on a steady decline. So they kind of went to, or the city of Sterling Heights found an opportunity, right? They found an opportunity there, and then they brought in the external collaborators to start building elsewhere. And North Carolina is another example. Raleigh, Durham, the cities came together and said, this is 25 years ago, let's do something with this triangle of space. I think it spans, a few hundred miles. And they started talking with external, private, and public collaborators to bring that all together. The city may have owned, like on Michigan Avenue, those cities may have owned some land. Yes, it's just about the collaborators you seek.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Joe.
It's a good question. After speaking with them, we spoke with all of them, and they would love to bring Magic back, the coalition that already existed. And they see Canton as kind of, we hit on some perception things, and we've talked about this in, other meetings that we've had together. The perception of Canton is that you guys are awesome, Canton is great, but you kind of do your own thing, right? And for whatever reason, maybe you have the resources and the capabilities to do so, you're not playing well with others. And it's not negative. It's not a negative in a negative connotation. That was before. Now they're all in for Canton to come in and champion any sort of coalition. They would love to work with the A+, the varsity team, kind of, that's kind of the perception of Canton, to work on some of these recommendations. They would, of course, 100%. But be that champion. Start the conversation. Well, we started it for you.
One of the things we explored at some point as a recommendation, but we didn't make it because we didn't think it was necessarily something that, it was our place necessarily, but it was to kind of like champion being the lead of Magic again, right? Like taking that concept and restart it, jump it again and take the lead of it. And instead of being an island, right, between certain cities, become that bridge, right, for lack of a better term. So
I think, when you talk about like big initiatives like this, and a lot of people in here are experts in that, how do you implement these things? One of the key concepts in this is that you create early wins, right? You want to win something, put it out there, create a buzz, and create a win. So from all the different things we've shown you, you have like this one young person in here getting excited about Nifty really quickly. That could be one to get started. All of these recommendations can be tied together in the idea of Maine eventually, but what are the things you can get started tomorrow and be done within 2 or 3 months so that it creates the buzz, it creates the momentum you need right now. And then you start thinking about being the leaders for Magic and then just building it up one step on top of another. But it can be overwhelming. You see all these recommendations and you're like, oh, yikes. Status quo is not so bad. But then the question is like, there's going to be money spent, but there's also decline in revenue if you have nobody living in Canton. That's also a possibility if everybody just leaves. So I think that also has to be factored in. Doing nothing has consequences as well.
Yeah, and just to add to that is that about perception, it is an old perception. But the problem is that it stays long in memory, and that's what is happening right now. So just to clarify.
We have another question online. Julant, he's part of our technology committee. He's also a fellow engineer from Visteon. Julant, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Great presentation. Thank you for your time today. Just by looking at your overall recommendations, would you be able to go to the next step of listing what are must-haves versus nice-to-haves, just to provide some better direction overall?
Great question. The question that he's making is, given all the recommendation that we have provided, can we divide them by must-have versus nice-to-have? And we try to do that in we name it differently. We say foundational versus aspirational infrastructure is where we focus the most in that area, because when we say foundational or must-have, we didn't call it must-have because you're fine, right? You still have connectivity on your phones, and you're still walking around town or moving yourself around. But we put it as a foundational because even if Maine becomes to fruition or not, right, having better 5G connectivity or fiber connection or more walkable areas or more sidewalks or more trails, things like that, or bike lanes, regardless of Maine, that's still going to be really good for your citizens, right? You can have it regardless. So that's one of those things that we divided that way. The other things that we mentioned, like the mixed-use development, that's an aspirational, right? This doesn't have to happen, but it's something you could potentially do to make this a realization.
Must have, to answer, straight to the point, you must have dedicated resources working on Maine in order to pull any of these recommendations together, because you have a staff and you have resources currently allocated to what their full-time jobs are. You want this thing to become a reality, and you want it to become a reality now, and for the right reasons, in the right way. Dedicate a resource to manage that, implement it, and execute on it.
Questions in the room? No? Oh, yes, go ahead.
So you mentioned a few companies that were interested in working with Canton to develop parts of that new tech hub. How do you see Canton looking for potentially more, or trying to find any other companies and then working on communicating with them and collaborating on these initiatives?
That's a good question.
Great question. The question was that how Canton can find other collaborators outside the ones that we already found so far. It's a great question, and again, we believe that having someone who is assigned to be this, and again, we call it Chief of Mobility Innovation, can be named anything you want, right? We're just trying to go with things that have been already placed. But the idea is that this person could start making connections with, the University of Michigan, M-City, Spark, the Sale Lorry Entrepreneurship Fund. There's multiple organizations that we talk about University of Michigan because that's what we know very well, right? But there's other schools. We actually reached out to Michigan State as well. We talk is probably a stretch. I had some exchange with them over emails, and they seem interested. It's just we didn't have enough traction or time to actually sit down with them. The other universities nearby, they are very willing to connect with other entities. And often those schools have students that are creating a new venture, right? A new startup. And you could find a lot of those networking in that manner. And also, once you start saying, hey, Canton is doing innovation, mobility, technology, something like that, again, one of those things that we were talking about was the Office of Mobility Innovation. Then you can start broadcasting and branding Canton as a place to go to. People will come to you as well.
It'll be a snowball effect.
It's a snowball effect. Or at least that's what we believe. Mm-hmm.
They need to foster that development.
Absolutely.
They can't come and say, you need to put 5 lanes in.
No, definitely.
You need to do this. You need to do that. That just kills development. They need a partner.
Correct. That's what we call in collaborators. It's going with the idea of working together, right? Instead of working against. Absolutely.
This is why you say, why is that property not developed?
Absolutely.
Government regulation.
Yeah. So something that we, and maybe we didn't clarify that enough, Something we found very, very refreshing about working with the staff here in Canton, with Anne-Marie and Joe and Kristen and Jade and the entire team. The entire staff is very motivated to support such initiative here in Canton. And to us, and even talking to our faculty advisor, he's like, it's rare sometimes to go to an organization and everybody being so engaged and so positive towards the initiative. So you have something really good going on here where the entire staff is very willing to work towards those things. You have something else?
Go do your thing.
The surgeon has to leave. Thank you. Any other questions in the audience? We can talk afterwards also.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you guys' time.
Okay, and I don't have any more online. Well, thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Definitely.